He's one of the best in the business. You know him as his great handicaps on wagertalk.com. I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Bryan Leonard from Wager Talk and Bryan Leonard Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at @BLeonardSports. Bryan, welcome back, my man. How are you doing this fall and holiday season?
Everything's going great. I look as good as I possibly can on the video, I could tell. But no, everything's going good. Getting ready for the holidays, and it's hard to believe, but college football season is just about over.
That's right. It is kind of ending, but college basketball is ramping up. And yeah, we have some technical difficulties with Bryan's camera, but that's okay because this will be just fine and podcast form presented by Betfred Sportsbook, my man. So very happy to have you back on. And it is Thanksgiving coming up this week. So we have some Thanksgiving questions. And, I was thinking about this over the last week or so, and I figured why not talk about it in the podcast? There's some things that are overrated for holidays and things that are underrated. And there's some ones specific to the Thanksgiving. So I'm just going to say 5. You can give me as many as you can. The 5 most overrated foods or things about Thanksgiving. Bryan, why don't you start at number 5?
Well, I don't do a lot of shopping, but I know that the Black Friday and all that stuff is really popular. But nowadays with Amazon and ordering things to be delivered to your house, I think the Black Friday deal is a little bit overrated.
I love it, man. Why didn't I think of that one? That's true. Black Friday is very overrated. I haven't went out on a Black Friday. I'm scared to look at a store or even use the gas station on Black Friday. I think it's a horrible day, and it's a day you should definitely stay home and watch football. There's no reason to be out the doors, in my opinion, on such a terrible day. Now, there's going to be great deals, of course, but if you're resourceful, you can find those deals anyway. Let's be honest. So I'll take Cyber Monday all day on Amazon.com. I can just buy stuff over Black Friday, right? So mine is eating a normal lunch on Thanksgiving. I think there's no need to eat lunch when you have all these appetizers out there, those delicious, cheese spreads and dips and all that good stuff that they serve. So I think lunch is a little overrated, my man.
I think I love to get together with family and friends on Thanksgiving, but the whole dinner preparation and all that, to me, I think is overrated. They have a lot of restaurants now. You can just order the food and pick it up. And I think that's the way to go anymore, especially for my wife and I. It's just the two of us. And the olden days where, you're growing up and mom and dad, and especially mom, does all the work and the aunts and uncles come over and do all that. It's nice to see everybody, but that's a lot of work that doesn't need to be happening in my life. I'll tell you that.
Oh, that's for sure. So just the whole dinner in itself is overrated for you.
Yep.
That makes total sense. Anything else on the overrated side?
Yeah, most of the foods that come out for Thanksgiving, I'm not a big fan of. I never liked turkey until I started deep frying the turkey. Deep fried turkey is great. Regular turkey, I'll pass on that.
Okay, that makes sense. I've had both. I think deep fry is probably edges it out slightly, but it just depends upon. Just don't overdo it, because if you overdo it in the oven, it turns dry, which is horrible. My number 4 is serving salad for Thanksgiving. I think it's just wasted stomach space for anything healthy that day. So get rid of all that miserable salad. Number 3, pumpkin spice. One time is a max to have anything pumpkin, in my opinion. You can have pumpkin pie or whatever. And pumpkin spice sounds very holiday fun, but then it's just sitting in the fridge because, let's face it, it's really not all that great. And nobody's going to pick that over like French vanilla cream or anything like that. Number 2 is cranberries, Bryan. I don't think cranberries are any good, and I think they're just massively overrated. If they were good, Bryan, we'd be eating cranberries all year, but do we do that?
I agree. It's like eggnog.
Like eggnog. We can throw eggnog there, I guess. I only like eggnog with a good amount of brandy myself, but I suggest instead of cranberries, you put cherries in there instead. The little cherries with the cherry juice or whatever way you want to make it. And number 1 most overrated food, at least, is turducken. I mean, putting a duck inside of a turkey. Quit lying to yourselves, people. Duck tastes like shit. It's a gamey food. You eat it if you're starving. You probably ate it in the olden days because that's all you could shoot that day. But honestly, it's not good. Quit pretending it is. Keep it bird. Quit wasting your time. So turducken is my number one most overrated food here. Let's go for the most underrated foods or things about Thanksgiving. And my number 5 is not having like really good Thanksgiving music or movies. I think music and movies sometimes kind of make a holiday season, and you have it on in the background sometimes or in the mornings for the kids. And there's no good music for Thanksgiving. I mean, at least for Halloween, you got Thriller and a few other Halloween songs, and there's some Halloween movies and Christmas movies and tons of Christmas music, but there's nothing for Thanksgiving. So I'm a little bit baffled that there isn't any, Brian.
I'll probably upset a few people here, but I wish they had other teams playing on Thanksgiving other than Dallas and Detroit every year. If you're not a fan of either one of those teams, and in fact, if there's a year that neither one of them are doing well, who wants to watch a football game? So
there you go. What are some other underrated things about Thanksgiving that you can think of?
well, I'm a big mashed potatoes guy. A lot of butter in the mashed potatoes. I love that all the time. So that's something that I look forward to on Thanksgiving.
All right, mashed potato. I agree with you. I love mashed potatoes, and actually, that kind of goes with my number 1 here. So I'll go through my list real quick. Paper plates and utensils is number 4. That's underrated. Who the hell wants to do just piles and piles of dishes after dinner? There's no reason to do that. I almost think you probably better to save it for the next day. But geez, man, there's already enough dishes when it comes to making Thanksgiving. Have paper plates, maybe even plastic utensils, and seriously cut down on the dishes. Massively underrated for paper plates and utensils. Number 3 is college basketball. There's really good games in college basketball on that day. And if the NFL's not working out for you, you can always watch college basketball. It's usually on a little bit earlier, though. But I think starting the day with some college basketball is always wonderful on Thanksgiving. I think that's a little bit underrated for some of the sports fans out there. Number 2, I put booze/tobacco. Because sometimes you'll have that cousin or aunt or uncle that just drives you nuts. You kind of feel like you need a break. Nothing like going outside having a cigar or a drink to get through some of the tougher times with the family. So booze and tobacco to me on the holiday is definitely underrated. And number 1 really goes with your mashed potatoes, Brian. I like gravy. I mean, gravy's amazing. And if gravy was even somewhat healthy, I would have it on every time I have potatoes or meat. Even for Easter, I make ham gravy and it tastes delicious. Gravy is a very underrated food, in my opinion. And if you can just dump it on pretty much all your everything, stuffing, mashed potatoes, turkey, and it makes it better, it's obviously one of the most important things to Thanksgiving, Brian.
Yeah, you mentioned ham. Didn't even talk about that. I'd prefer a nice juicy ham over turkey any day.
Yeah, ham's delicious. Absolutely. That's my Easter and Christmas thing. So I don't disagree with you at all. Ham is awesome. If you don't like turkey, I would definitely much better than duck, let's just say. So throw in a ham if needed. But anyways, this is a sports betting podcast. So let's get into the NFL slate of games, Brian. And we'll start right out on Thanksgiving, and make sure you get your fantasy football lineups and your bets in early, because these games start pretty early, 10:30 Mountain Time, for the Buffalo Bills at the Detroit Lions. And this line moved itself up again here. I'm seeing, looking at the DraftKings screen, it is at +10. Total is at 54. What are your thoughts about this game, Brian?
Yeah, Detroit's getting a little bit healthier. Buffalo's still beat up. Buffalo hasn't been as dominant as of late, and the travel situation, I think you have to take into account here, because Buffalo was just played in Detroit. So that short week where you would normally have this, if this game was played last week in Buffalo as it was scheduled, that may have made a little bit of a difference. Not a long flight, but still from Buffalo to Detroit. it makes a difference. But now you've got both teams with the same amount of rest in the same city. That's something we've never, at least I can't remember to see on the Thanksgiving games. Like the offenses here, I think they both have success, but you're over that key number of 54, 51, 54 is key numbers. So you got to be pretty confident there's going to be a lot of scoring here if you're going to bet this one over at this point. And 10 looks to be a little high, but then again, if Buffalo has the ability to blow anybody out, but Detroit playing at home here, that's probably the way I would lean at this number, but probably won't be on it myself.
I tried to look up Buffalo in the fourth quarter because they have to have one of the worst defenses in the fourth quarter. And that's partially because they're winning so much and playing prevent. But still, they have been killing a lot of people's bets just based upon the fourth quarter and all the backdooring that's been happening in Buffalo games. Well, the weird thing about Buffalo is they're traveling back home after this last Sunday's game, and they're coming back for the Thanksgiving game, probably, I would imagine, on Wednesday. So it's almost like they're traveling extra from what I heard in this situation. So that makes me really lean Detroit. And now this thing's at a 10. Detroit's got that good, really good offense. They're finally getting healthier a little bit. If they can just come in with some motivation, I think they have a shot at making the upset here. So I'm going to give you a strong lean to Detroit.
Well, you must have gotten better information than I did, because that was before they were going to Detroit for the Browns game. They acted like that was going to be where they were staying. So you've got more up-to-date information than what I have then.
Yeah, I just found that out, actually.
Okay.
So that's very interesting. Now, what I'm looking at here is the next game, and it's a huge game here because you have the Dallas Cowboys, who was in a massive game last week, and it was a massive beatdown because they destroyed the Minnesota Vikings, did they? And the Cowboys are minus 9.5 now. The total on this game is 45.5. Now, I have a play on this one, Brian, and I'm going to go over what I'm doing here. I think the Giants are probably the second most fraudulent team if the Vikings are the first. They're probably a little bit back and forth here. I think Tony Pollard's still just scoring more touchdowns as we speak against the Vikings, but now it's the same situation, yet the Cowboys are at home. What has the Giants really done, in my opinion? This is a big spread, but the Cowboys rank third in defensive EPA. The Giants are 22nd. The Giants give up 5.3 rushing yards per attempt, one of the worst in the league. That's what the Cowboys do. They run the ball. Zeke is healthy now. Tony Pollard's probably even the better running back right now. They average 4.7 on the ground, and their whole offense would look a lot better, Brian, if Dak Prescott was playing all year. A lot of the stats involved what happened with Cooper Rush, and the Cowboys are still 0.5 net yards per play. The Giants net negative 0.6 yards per play. They're 7-3, net negative 0.6 yards per play. Cowboys at home, big game, momentum's with them. Giants have cluster injuries now at wide receivers, lost Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm laying the points. I'm laying it, and I love it under 10 still. I think that this could be a snoozer, and you might have to change the channel, Brian.
Yeah, if you take a look at the net points, and you mentioned it with the Giants, they're 7-3 on the season. They're up +1 in net points. You take a look at Dallas, they're 7-3. They're up +84. Play 10 games. That's an average of 8.3 points per game that they've done better. And as you mentioned, they are playing at home. Got to give them a little bit of a home advantage there. So, yeah, I like the Dallas side. I have a feeling if you do like Dallas, you'll better get it in now, because I think as the week goes on, this thing will hit a higher number. It's sitting to get 9.5 right now, somewhat juiced depending on where you look. But if you want the Cowboys, get them now, because I got a feeling this is going to go off at 10.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you like the Cowboys, get them early. I set myself up even a little bit earlier with a slightly better number. So that's what I recommend doing, getting the best in the number in both situations and try to eliminate your risk. That's all about how we sports bet. Let's move on to the next one. New England Patriots versus Minnesota Vikings. Vikings are like it's more like a minus 2.8-ish. I mean, the Vikings -3 plus 100 I'm seeing here on the DK screen. If you want the Patriots, you have to lay some juice at -120. So, this is more like a 2.8 spread. The total is pretty low, 42.5. Anything on this one, Brian?
Well, from the Minnesota standpoint, I just talked about net points on the season. Hard to believe, but they are 8-2. They're down 2 net points on the season after being blown out last week. New England is up 44 points on the season, and they're playing in a division in which all 4 teams have a winning record. All 4 teams have a net point advantage. So that points me a little bit towards New England here, but you do have Minnesota off that embarrassing loss. And traditionally, this has been a tough place to play for the opposition. So unfortunately, I don't have enough to make a play on this one, but if it gets to 3, I may take a little piece of the Patriots.
Great point. I personally think this is a pretty good line. We don't have to bet everything, and there's no reason to force anything. I think that I have feelings that the Vikings, even though they show being very overrated, it's funny. After last week, they're actually negative now in point differential. They're an 8-2 team, Brian, and negative in point differential. Now, obviously, the big outlier, 40-3, was a big part of that. I think the Vikings are above average. I think that the Patriots are also slightly above average. I give the edge on a neutral to the Vikings. So that's why this is kind of a perfect spread. I don't think that, I would guess I would lean just because this could be a tie and you get the field goal. The 3 points is such a key number, but no play for me right now. I'm hoping to just enjoy the game. Sometimes you just got to do that. Very end of the night, no reason to be sweating anything at the end. Let's move on to Saturday's slate, actually Sunday's slate, I should say. The Houston Texans versus the Dolphins. Dolphins -13, total 46. I'm going to pass on this one. I just think that, this is probably a good line. The Dolphins have the opportunity to just beat up another opponent, yet with their skill positions, yet the Houston, I could see them down 18, 19 points and backdoor it. Any thoughts?
Well, I don't want any point of Houston because it's clear that I won't say they're not trying to lose, but they're not trying to win. And they've got, I believe, a 1.5 game lead now for the number 1 draft choice. When you have the starting quarterback, Tua for Miami, when he's healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. And this Dolphins offense could score. The only problem is the defense has struggled at certain times, but I'm not sure this Houston offense can move the ball well enough to make a difference here. I'm seeing, juice 12.5 at Pinnacle and 13 just about everywhere else. Don't like to lay double digits in the NFL, but that would be the only way I would take a look here because Miami's a legitimate team and the Houston Texans are just playing out the season.
Yeah, they're really playing out the season. Miami Lovey looks lost on the sidelines there, and just it's one of those teams where you wonder there's going to be a spot where they all come together and do something good. But it's hard to predict that spot now. And now you're going to get some teams that are going to be, I would say, a little bit more of a juice spread. Maybe it should be -10 and it's -13 with the whole fact that the Texans are not going to play in the second half. That's true. If teams are getting blown out, they have nothing to play for. They're not going to give an effort. So, a pretty ugly game in my opinion. Ravens versus Jaguars. Jaguars now down to +3.5. The total is 43. I have a play on this one, so I'm going to let you go first.
Well, the Ravens are a team that's hard to handicap. It was interesting that the line was sitting there last week, and we didn't know if the starting quarterback was going to play Jackson for Baltimore. Then it comes over that he is playing, and the line actually went down a little bit. So that kind of was strange. Maybe they figure they'd rather have the healthy backup as opposed to the injured starter. But Jacksonville's a team who's been pretty impressive this year. It couldn't be any worse after having probably the worst NFL coach in modern history, going all the way back to Rich Kotite, I guess, and replacing him this year. So they played very well. Don't like to trust Baltimore as a road favorite, but at least they found ways to win. Jacksonville seems to find ways to lose these close games.
They do. Absolutely do. I mean, the spot here really favors Jacksonville though, because they're coming off the bye. The Ravens kind of had a snoozer almost a little bit
Mhm.
against Carolina, which makes me a little bit more worried about it. But the Jacksonville Jaguars are actually looking really healthy. They're one of the more healthier teams, I guess, in the NFL. They lost one or two, maybe one key guy or two key guys, but like compared to the rest of the NFL, Jacksonville seems to be the healthiest team to me. I think that it's just Shaq Griffin really is who they lost. That's big, and they no really injuries this month since November. Looking at the numbers here, these teams aren't really all that different, except for the fact that Jacksonville seems to choke in their big games, and Baltimore seems to kind of win the big games. Baltimore is a net positive, just 0.1 yard per play. Jacksonville's dead even. The Ravens are ninth in offensive EPA. Jacksonville's 11th. The Jaguars are 19th or 18th in defensive EPA. The Ravens are 17th. I mean, you look at some of the advanced numbers, they're very close. And, Jacksonville's at home, probably no home field advantage much, but still, this 4 points was too much for me. So I grabbed the 4, and that's what I wrote, but I grabbed it at 3.5. I put 2.5 stars on it. This is another best bet for me, Brian.
Good. We talked about the injuries. Keep in mind, at the end of the year, the teams that have the most success are the teams that have avoided injuries. It happens in every sport. So at the beginning of the year, you may see a team lose a lot of games. Well, they have a lot of their better players injured. And when they come back later on in the season, you could take advantage of that in the lines, because a lot of people do not pay attention to it because there's so many players on an NFL team. So uh, the Thursday and Friday injury reports are very important when you're betting the NFL.
They're massive, especially the Friday one, and you even get some stuff on Saturday. So,
Mm-hmm.
you to get your early lines, you try to get your line movement, and then you wait in some of these. Kind of like this next game, Brian, because this is the narrative game. The Bengals at the Titans. Titans plus 1.5 at home. Total 43.5. The big narrative. The Titans are looking for revenge for losing in the playoffs, throwing 3 interceptions, blah, blah, blah. Well, I will say that the Bengals are probably even as fraudulent as they were of a Super Bowl, I guess, compared to the Bills and the Chiefs, right? They were fraudulent. A Super Bowl contender last year. They're better this year based upon the fact that they fixed their offensive line. I got to tell you, I am worried about the Mixon injury. He's such a massive part of this team. I wonder how fast Samaje P. Ryan can kind of get up. They also lost Chris Evans earlier this season, another running back. But I mean, if Mixon's playing, I would play the Bengals, but I'm not going to touch it until I know more information. What are your thoughts?
Well, the Texans are a team. We just talked about somebody who can't find ways to win. The Titans definitely have that ability to win these close games. Maybe it's the Vrabel's days at New England, but they're able to win without looking good, and that's the kind of teams that usually stay under the betting market radar. Cincinnati coming off of, I know it's not the same Steelers team as it has been in the past, but that's their big rival, and they beat the Steelers on the road last week. Unfortunately, I had Pittsburgh in that one, and that hurt, but. So they're coming off of that big win over the Steelers. Tennessee's a team that always seems to be pretty much on an even keel. Lean the Titans here. Maybe I'll get something if it gets up to I see a couple 1.5s out there. Maybe this is a good 6-point teaser play with the Titans. You get a total of 42.5, 42, something like that. And usually those are your best. Your best opportunities on a low total game with a 6-point teaser, and I likely be on the Titans here as a teaser.
Great teaser leg, plus 1.5 past the
Yeah.
7. Low total 42.5. Absolutely. I don't disagree with the teaser leg on the Titans whatsoever. Should be a good game. Falcons versus Commanders. The commies are -4. The total is 42. Heineke kind of showed everybody that he should be the starting quarterback, and I almost think that he should get some apologies from the organization for bringing in Wentz. And I thought last year they had a massive hard schedule, and now and I actually thought he earned the starting position last year. I was really surprised to see them bring in Wentz and, almost the garbage that came from the Colts. But now you're talking about them laying points. And when bad teams lay points, it's usually a bad time to back them. So past the 3, not excited for it. All I do know, the Falcons are fraudulent themselves. I believe that the spread's probably close. I mean, let's just pretend this was a -3. I'd be leaning strong to Washington. I think Washington can stop the run. That's why. And Atlanta's a running team. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think the line is basically where I would expect it to be. The Commodores are down, or Commanders, excuse me, are -9 in net points on the season. The Falcons -15. But you have to keep in mind, every other team in the NFC East is a positive net points, and the only team in the NFC South that's positive is Tampa Bay, and that's only by 3. So you've got a team that's 6 points better on the season in a tougher division, and that's something that I think has a little bit of meaning here. So Washington should be favored by more than 3. It's sitting at 4 right now. It's probably where it deserves to be. If there's a 4.5 pop up, I may have some interest in the Falcons, but at 4 or less, Washington is probably the only way I'd look at this point.
Yeah, it's Washington or nothing for me as well. It's just a very heavy metric based Washington favor, yet bad team laying points. That's what I'm kind of beat myself up through. I'm going to dig a little deeper into this after this game. Bears versus Jets. Jets are -4.5. The total's 39.5. It's funny. Both these teams are going through quarterback controversies in a way. The controversy with the Bears is just basically Justin Fields' injury. There's been some bad reports out there saying he separated his shoulder. Well, he didn't. He beat up his shoulder. And then, his ham, he's a little bit banged up. And then the Jets just have a kid that's really young running his mouth that probably doesn't belong in the NFL in the first place. And now they're thinking about switching him out for White. White did a really good job last year, if you remember, when he came in. The problem with the Jets is I don't downgrade them if they bring Wilson out. I almost might upgrade them. But I do think, even as a Bears fan, that Fields shouldn't play this game. Give him a week out. If it's a 17-game schedule, you are not going to the playoffs. You have a very hard schedule ahead. You got the Packers the next week. Rest Fields this week. Play him against the Packers. It makes total sense to me. I played the Jets, but I had a better number than this. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, I can't touch it, the Bears without the starting quarterback. And I agree. I wouldn't even mind if I was a Bears fan to sit in the rest of the year. They're not going to the playoffs at this point. And the Jets quarterback, you're right. I like this Jets team. I like the coach. I like just about everything out of it. But they need to find a quarterback, and they don't have one this year. So, the Jets are all excited about their record right now. But if I'm a Jets fan, I would rather, let them play out the season and hopefully, don't make the playoffs. You can get a better draft choice for the future, because they're not a team that is going to put any scare in anybody once the playoffs come around. And this line sitting at 4.5 right now is probably what I would make it. The total is 39.5. I would look to play the under, but if Fields does come back, he has that ability to move the change with his feet, so that under may not look good. But if you're looking to get ahead of something from a standpoint of if he doesn't play, I would have to take a look at the under here. You've got what would be a backup quarterback for Chicago against what should be a backup quarterback for the Jets.
I think Fields is exactly the total in this. You're looking at 36.5, no Fields. You're looking at probably 42.5 with Fields. I think that's exactly what you're looking at. Jets have a good defense, and that's kind of what they've been living off of this year. And the Bears have a bad defense, but yet again, maybe they can stop the run a little bit and slow the Jets down. And they expect this to be somewhat of an ugly game. We'll see what happens. Broncos, Panthers +2.5, total 35. I mean, there's nothing to say about this game except tease the freaking Carolina Panthers as your number one teaser, like 8.5.
Yeah, unless you can get the 3 with Carolina, that sounds like a great teaser. You got a total of basically in the 36 range. Carolina is a team that they have some ability, but they don't have a major league ready quarterback. Obviously, I know a lot about Baker Mayfield when he played in Cleveland. Root for the guy because I think he got a bad deal from the Browns management, but still, um, don't trust Denver to lay points on the road. Don't trust Carolina for the most part to win a game straight up. So that to me sounds like a great spot for the teaser, taking it up to 8.5, 8. And if we get the +3, I guess that's better, but I don't think we'll get there.
Bucks Browns +3, home dog 43.5 is the total. The Tampa Bay's just been terrible most of the year. Now they did get healthier and they showed it when they went to Europe and played the Jaguars, and then they got the bye. Tampa's that weird team where the metrics aren't lining up to their true strength because of some of those injuries. I think that Tampa can stuff the run now, and if Chubb and Hunt can't run the ball, then it's all in the arms of Brissett, and I don't like that. Is Brissett going to start, or is what's his face going to start from Houston?
Yeah, he comes back next. I believe they play Houston next week, and he gets to play against his former team.
I was double checking that because I just kind of had a brain fry. I figured that he went back to practice is the report I saw. Sorry,
that's correct. He's back at practice.
Exactly. So he's back at practice, but he can't play. I think this is even when he comes back to play. I'm probably not touching it because lots of variance can happen there. Mm-hmm. Tampa or nothing. But I don't like Tampa either. The Browns are desperate here. Their backs against the wall. Power rating wise, this is really close to the 3 just because how disappointing Tampa's been laying on the road. So I'm a pass. I got nothing.
Yeah, I see a heavily juiced 3 or a lightly juiced 3.5 either way. Cleveland's I grew up in Cleveland. I now live in Vegas, and these are probably the 2 most disappointing teams in the NFL, and those are the teams that I kind of root for. The Browns running game did nothing last week. They shut down Chubb, you shut down the Browns. And Tampa's in the past, last year, they were excellent against the run. But as you mentioned, they had a lot of injuries. Tampa Bay matches up pretty well against this Browns team on the ground. Brissett's playing okay. He's probably done a little bit better than I thought he would this year. But this is a team who, as the game goes off a little bit farther on, they seem to struggle. This may be a good play where you get the Browns +2 points or something in that range in the first half, because I really don't trust them if they fall behind in the game. They takes away the running game a little bit. So if I had to play this one, I'd play Cleveland in the first half, catching a couple points.
Yeah, first half playing a bad look, really. Motivation here, trying to get another W before Watson comes back. Yeah, it makes sense. I don't disagree with that at all. Raiders, Seahawks -3.5 now, total 47.5. This is kind of where you're looking at. I know the Seahawks are better than the Raiders, but Seahawks slightly fraudulent, probably too. The Raiders definitely, I have to say, underrated by now. I know they struggled last week and it was a coin flip game against Denver, but it was in Denver, and the Raiders, I can't bet them because whenever I do, I'm wrong. When I think it's a great spot for them, they get smoked. Whenever it's a terrible spot, they win. It's just nothing makes sense with this Raiders team. Probably a good spread, 3.5 in Seattle, 47 total. Thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, when the season started, I thought Seattle was the worst team in the league, and I thought the Raiders were probably about average. They were very lucky last year to win all those games. So all those close games were in their favor. This year, they're all going against them. We all remember the Jets game earlier in the season, and that's a lot of what the Raiders have had, games in which they had, and they let it slip away. But last week, winning that game in Buffalo in Denver in overtime, that may have brought them together a little bit because they had the week before, if you remember, Carter almost broke down on the podium. He wants to win so badly, and that win last week was a real lightning rod for them. So I would expect them to come out with a pretty good game here. I see a 3.5 and 4. If he gets to 4.5, I may take a shot out here on the Raiders. But if you do, you just got to keep in mind that the Seahawks have the better coaching, and coaching wins a lot of football games.
There you go. Seahawks do have the better coaching. I don't disagree at all with that. Chargers, Cardinals. Cardinals plus 4.5, total 47.5. This thing moved up after the Cardinals' poor showing, but it was against the Niners, and they had a backup quarterback in Colt McCoy, and Colt McCoy did stand up against a bad Rams team last week too and beat them. But this is one of those situations where Arizona's now the desperate team. I think the Chargers probably should be desperate, and they always just choke those games away at the end. But how can you trust the Chargers to be laying road chalk to anybody? In my opinion, when they beat the Browns, they shouldn't have. Brissett threw that touchdown.
Right.
They should have kicked. Browns could have kicked the field goal and won it, but Brissett threw picking the touchdown. Made no sense.
Any ways to lose.
They sure as hell do. And now Chargers laying road chalk like this. Ugh, it's way too much. Strong lean to the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm not a big Cardinals fan here, but if you were to bet the Chargers every time they're a favorite, you'd be probably in the poorhouse. Excuse me, at that time. So
yeah, you would. Certainly would. Saints, Niners laying 9, total 43. I was really curious where this spread was going to go. I thought it was going to hit a 10. If I had to play it, I would play the Saints. It's just a spot where the Niners kind of, coming off Mexico, big travel, coming home, kind of prove their point. And, the Saints have to be getting pretty desperate. They have a nice win against the Rams, 2 winners last week, but the Niners, that Christian McCaffrey got them really hyped up and they're getting healthier, but the Niners' weakness is still their secondary. The problem is I don't think Andy Dalton can get the ball to their receivers that well. What a perfect spread. At first I thought it'd be a Saints player, but I would at the 10, but the total's only 43. And so you still lean them, but I'm going to pass.
yeah, usually if a team looks as impressive as the Niners do on Monday Night Football, those are the teams I'm looking to back or looking to fade. Excuse me, the following week because it's fresh in everybody's mind. I do expect this line to hit 10, and when it does, I'll probably be on the Saints. Just talk through, sitting in a sports book or play some bets. A lot of the people now are starting to say, okay, the 49ers are the team to beat in the NFC, not the Eagles. So once you start getting a lot of talk like that, that usually means that team is starting to hit the peak and it's time to go against them. And so if I get a 10, I'll probably be on the Saints here.
All right. Makes sense to me. Let's move on to the Rams versus the Chiefs. Chiefs are laying 14.5. Total is 44. Explain this line, Brian.
Easy. The Rams stink, and the Chiefs have a lot of talent, and they're playing at home.
The Rams stink. That's a pretty good analysis because I can't disagree at all with that, man. Yeah, the Rams are terrible.
Who would ever think we will see the Super Bowl champions catching 15 points the following year, right?
Right. It's funny. And they're just in coast mode. They don't even care about getting back. You can tell they don't. Is Stafford playing or no? Has that been announced? Probably not, right?
I haven't seen, no.
Yeah, they're not going to announce that, because these freaking teams say game time decision just so they don't give up too information. And I think the NFL is going to have to change that someday. Maybe say by Saturday you have to have your stuff in or something because it's just been absolutely silly with what happened with Matt Ryan and some of the other teams here. So, yeah, I mean, with Stafford, it's probably a lean to the Rams, even though how ugly it is. And it shows, I pulled up their injury report here. It shows after further testing, they still haven't placed him in concussion protocol. So it's just, he has I have no idea. And a lot of people have speculated that his elbow is bad too, right? So pass for me. The Chiefs are a powerful team and they're really making a statement right now. Packers versus Eagles. This is interesting too. The Eagles -7. The Packers have a little juice on that 7 right here. You can probably find some 6.5s. The total is 46 here. The Eagles kind of showed some weakness, and it's like I've been saying, and this is the reason I took the Colts and the Washington football team the last 2 weeks is because the Eagles can't stop the run. Now they got Dominican Sue. Is he going to play? I don't know. Is that enough to stop the run? Maybe. But the Packers can run the ball. Dillon's awesome. Jones is awesome. There's only 2 things the Packers do well right now. It's run the football or pass it to the running backs and defend the pass deep with Jari Alexander. That's what they do good. What they do terrible, Packers can't stop the run, which is what Jalen Hurts and Sanders can do. And they they can't stop just the Eagles' powerful offense in general, I think. The Eagles almost have too many weapons. Now, Dallas Goedert, I think, was a massive injury for them. And I don't know if he's out for the seasons. I think it's just weeks. But I, right now, would probably lean to the Packers if they can just play it correctly and control the clock. What are your thoughts?
I'm looking the other way here. The Packers, if you take a look at the season, the net points, the Eagles are plus 80 in 10 games. The Packers are minus 41 in 11 games. So that's almost 4 points per game negative for the Packers, 8 points per game positive for the Eagles. That's 12. That's 12 points there, and you'd have to include the home advantage. Excuse me, the home field advantage also for the Eagles, which is probably a couple. And that puts it way above the 7 points they're using right now. I've watched a lot of these games all season long. I've yet to find a game where I've been very impressed with the Packers. The Eagles have been very good to me all year long. They've been very good to their backers. As long as it's 7 or less, I think the Eagles are the way to go in this one.
Yeah. The thing, and slightly into the Packers, just because metric, if they play it smart, what I was trying to say is the Packers can't throw and they can't stop the run. Mm-hmm. They can run the ball, and they can stop the deep pass. Metrically, my numbers are also higher on the Eagles. So it's probably from a matchup standpoint, I lean the Packers. Mm-hmm. From a pure metrics and numbers from my algorithm, I lean the Eagles. Probably stay away at that number. Last game, Steelers versus Colts. Colts minus 2.5. Another low total of 39. I bet where you're going to go with this is the obvious way.
Yeah, the obvious way is the Steelers on the teaser. I would like to find a movie out there that I can go watch this night, because this is going to be an ugly game. Not only have you got two bad teams, you've got two low-scoring teams. The Colts have played with some pretty nice hearts since they've made the Jeff Saturday move. And so they're shocking a lot of people in that regard. The Steelers last week, I thought the defense fell apart against the Bengals in the second half of the game. And when you're playing a rival and you blow a game like that you should have had on your own home field, that's got to be, a little bit of a letdown. But, they still get excited about playing Monday Night Football. So they'll bring their A games. But the only way I can take a look at this is the Steelers on the teaser line, because I don't really trust either one of these games when it comes down to a coin flip at the end of the contest.
Yeah, I don't trust either. That's completely fair. I think the Colts are a little bit better than the Steelers. In my power ratings, they are. Metrically, they are too. Metrically, it's actually higher on the Colts, but it's also Matt Ryan. You trust Matt Ryan in these situations? This is probably a last possession game. Wonderful teaser leg for the Steelers. Low total of 39. That's the only way to play this, in my opinion. Awesome stuff, Brian. We just got through that full card of NFL games. But before you go, I wanted to ask you a big game with Ohio State hosting Michigan. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, the line's about where I expected it to be, over 7 and less than 10. I've been more impressed by the Michigan. I would say the Michigan defense, at least in my opinion, may be the best unit on the field. Ohio State's offense has been good, but they've been good against bad defensive teams. When they played like Notre Dame, they struggled a little bit offensively. They have not looked as good as they had in prior years. I still think they're one of the best teams in the country, and if they win this game, they deserve to go to the playoffs. But I think this is not your best Ohio State team that I've seen. They've shown some problems. Michigan, that weak schedule at the beginning of the year, I really hope in the future they decide to schedule some actual football teams, because that's really hurting them. If they were to lose to Ohio State by a point in this, they won't make the Final Four because their schedule was so weak early in the season. So this is a must-win game for Michigan. In fact, it may be a must-win game for Ohio State. You never know. But the line's where it should be right now. I'm just looking forward to a real good game, and unfortunately, I probably won't have a bet on it.
Not worry. I lean Michigan first half a bit because they seem to be better in the first half than Ohio State lately. And my number 6.5, and I took a better number than it is right now on Michigan. So I'm going to be content with that. I also have Ohio State future at plus 600, took away early in the year. So I'm hoping that obviously that still can come through. Be nice to see both teams in as a Big Ten fan. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with that. Anything else in college?
On Thanksgiving Day, I do have a play on Mississippi over Mississippi State. I know there's a lot of talk about the head coach of Mississippi leaving, but I have this line closer to 7 than I do 3, and you're looking at something in the 2.5 range here. So I think we have enough, even if a lot of people are looking that he may be leaving. I still think Mississippi is the team to play here. They looked terrific until like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they had a couple bad days. So it's sort of like the stock market when you want to buy low, sell high. I think Mississippi right now is low, and I think we've got a little value on them.
All right, free play on Ole Miss. That sounds great. I have Ole Miss higher in my power ratings than the 3 as well, but the circumstances are throwing me off. I'm going to live bet this maybe personally. Just have a little fun with it, and this will be one I'm just going to enjoy. Where could our viewers and listeners get your great information and plays, Bryan?
Well, I'm on wagertalk.com. We've got videos all over the internet. Get on YouTube, search wagertalk.com, wagertalk TV, and a lot of videos not only explaining individual games, but talking about how to bet teasers and all the other good fun stuff a lot of the beginners don't know anything about, telling you what to avoid. You don't want to tease college football. You don't want to tease NFL totals. Just stick to the NFL sides and good numbers, and you can make some pretty good money teasing. Although, to be totally honest with you, I don't know anybody who's won money teasing this year, as these Wong teasers, Stanford Wong teasers, have not done well. But we explain a lot of that stuff, a lot of arbitrage, things like that at wagertalk.com.
Nice. Make sure you check out Bryan at wagertalk.com. Bryan, it was a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for all your great insights and information. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
I appreciate it. You do the same, sir.